Hi, my name is Ewan Wasno, and I'm doing a presentation on Jean-Michel Basquiat. Who is Jean-Michel Basquiat? Basquiat is an artist from Brooklyn. He decided to move to New York when he was 17. He had nothing when he moved there. He just knew he wanted to become an artist and he wanted to become famous. He had no plans, he just knew he was going to do it. How did he start to get noticed by people? He started doing tags by the name Samo all around New York City, and people of all classes started to notice his interesting poems he would spray paint around the city. They were intrigued and wanted to know who he was. When he first moved to New York, he had nothing. He would either sleep on the couches of friends he would meet, or he would just wander the streets, sometimes even for 3 or 4 nights at a time. He had nowhere to sleep, and he had nowhere else to go. Basquiat dated a girl, and he moved in with her very quickly, so he could have a place to stay. Not because he was a bad person. He just had to do it so he could survive, because he had nowhere else to live, and he was just living on the streets and stuff. So Basquiat had no money to buy canvases, so he would collect windows and doors that he would find on the sides of the streets, and he would paint on them. He also painted on fridges and anything he could really find. He would also make his own canvases out of pieces of wood and fabric he would collect off the side of the streets and things. Basquiat would get inspiration from anywhere, so when he worked, he always needed the radio on, the TV, and he would always look at encyclopedias, and he would always need music on and everything. He would also listen to conversations on the street, and he would put those into his work, and he was very good at channeling all that, whatever he was hearing, into his paintings. Basquiat really wanted to have a show, so he brought his art to several galleries to see if they would have a show for him, and one well-respected gallery agreed to let him have a show. And on the first night of his show, he actually sold every single one of his paintings, and he made $200,000 from nothing. After Basquiat's very successful show, he was able to buy all sorts of art supplies, and the owner of the gallery was so happy with the show, she let Basquiat use the basement of her gallery as a studio. Basquiat would live there most of the time. Basquiat had a very interesting personality. He always did what he wanted, and he never worried about what anyone else told him. He just experienced life in the way he wanted to, and he would always do what he thought was good for him. Basquiat's style was like no other at that time. He had a very distinct style which people loved for some reason. His style appealed to all sorts of people, not just wealthy old people, but the hip-hop community, the middle class, all artists, everyone just seemed to enjoy his paintings. Basquiat loved listening to music, especially jazz. He would listen to it every time he painted. He said it put him in a state like no other. And his favorite artist was Miles Davis to listen to. Basquiat was also known for doing controversial paintings, such as this one. This one is of a slave auction he did, which was shocking to some, but also important considering he was a black artist. At that time, the people who were buying his paintings were mostly older, wealthier white people. After his many successful shows, Basquiat started to become quite well known, and he got invited to many parties with other famous people attending, such as Madonna, Andy Warhol, Keith Haring, Rammellzee, and many others. He also got invited to dinners with them too. After partying with famous people a lot, he became to become very good friends with a lot of the famous people, such as Andy Warhol, and he actually became really good friends with Andy Warhol. And his manager suggested he tried collaborating with one of them, so he chose to collaborate with Andy Warhol, his best friend at the time, and he made a bunch of cool paintings. As Basquiat got more famous, he faced much more criticism, which really screwed him up as a person. In some interviews, he was racially discriminated to his face, and in one interview, he was even called an ape, which is just ridiculous. It was very difficult for Basquiat to deal with the fame and criticism. He couldn't handle it anymore, so he sadly turned to heroin. He said he used it to be able to focus on his paintings, but even he knew that wasn't true. After using drugs for a while, Basquiat began to look a lot worse. He also had mental health. His mental health was very affected, and it showed in his paintings. He began to paint about death, and his paintings were looking a lot scarier than normal, and the people that were close to him were really worried about this. One night before a party, Basquiat did a lot of heroin, which was too much for his body to handle, and it took his life at a very young age of 28 years old. His friends came up to get him, and there was no answer. They broke in and saw him lying on the floor. Now Basquiat is looked at to be one of the top artists that ever existed, and his paintings sell for absurd amounts of money, such as this painting right here. It just recently sold in May of 2017 for over $110 million. Thank you.